Hi, Dan Stein here, president of FAIR. Listen, I am pretty upset, and I know you probably are too, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what's been going on here in the House of Representatives, try to make a little bit of sense out of what we saw happen this week. Congress, looking at what's happening here on the southern border, had an opportunity to take some steps to fix the problem, stop it cold. You and I both know half of Central America seems to be emptying out. Thousands and thousands of people are coming across the border every day, making phony asylum claims, taking advantage of our humanitarian programs. Programs that were set up for people who are bona fide refugees are now being abused and exploited by loopholes that were created in part by, guess who? Former Vice President Joe Biden. Did you know Joe Biden was actually responsible for assisting Dianne Feinstein in passing the anti-trafficking law that's created the very loophole that's causing all these people to come up here and take advantage of it? Joe Biden should be held accountable. He needs to explain his role in passing that law, the Wilberforce anti-trafficking law in 2008. Well, at a time when this is going on, you would think Congress would want to spend some time fixing the problem. But in fact, that didn't happen. What happened in the House? The House passed by a significant margin, almost all Democrat votes, by the way, the American Dream and Protection Act, H.R. 6, which is nothing more than a massive amnesty for people who broke the law, people who were brought here as young people by their parents who broke the law. They included a provision that provides temporary protected status amnesty for people who have the so-called TPS, or temporary protected status benefit. Let's back up for a second and take a look at the situation. Congress is passing an amnesty bill precisely at a time when we're trying to disincentivize or discourage illegal immigration. Now, what is wrong with this picture? What is wrong with the idea of passing an incentive to reward illegal immigration at a time when our borders are completely out of control, probably more out of control than any time in American history, certainly in modern American history? The Democrats seem to be completely tone deaf on the problem. They seem to believe that what they do has no consequence in terms of interpreting these signals all around the world. We have people from all over the world now coming through Mexico. This bill would reward people who were given temporary protected status as a result of some temporary problem in their home country, earthquake, tsunami, hurricane, that kind of thing. In many cases, the situation that led to this temporary grant of status has long since passed, and nobody ever promised them they were going to be able to stay here permanently. There's no individualized determination with TPS. Blanket amnesties, or a blanket parole, if you will, or temporary relief is provided under temporary protected status with renewable 18-month provisions, interim provisions, and at the end of that, they're supposed to go back home. Now, why would Congress decide, why would the House decide, why would House Democrats decide to just on a blanket basis give a green card to everybody who has TPS? Why wouldn't Congress want them to go back home now that it's safe to do so, build their own countries, bring them back online, make them actually improve their economies, and take the skills they learned here and put them to work back in the home countries? But in fact, they included it, which including that group and including all the so-called DACA beneficiaries under the American Dream Act portion, we're talking about at least 2.5 million people getting green cards who eventually would then also be able to petition relatives. The Republicans worked very hard, and I just want to say that the thousands and thousands of FAIR members and activists and supporters who participated in this effort last week, this week, thank you very much. Thousands of you responded to our call, and you were lobbying and you were asking Congress to defeat this Democratic proposal. At the same time, you were supporting the motion to recommit. That's the provision that would send the bill back to committee with an amendment. And the amendment that was defeated by the Democrats in the motion to recommit would have prevented people with gang affiliations from getting amnesty. All right, now why? Only a handful of Democrats, a couple of Democrats supported that amendment. How can this be? How can this be that the Democrats won't even support a provision that prevents people who are members of gangs from getting amnesty under their bill? The motion to recommit, of course, was defeated, and the bill then passed by a significant majority, mostly Democrats, a few Republicans, and now would be sent to the Senate. Of course, would the Senate take it up? Well, it certainly was a more difficult proposition for the Democrats who voted for this bill, thanks to your efforts, than would have been if we hadn't been doing what we have been trying to do all along. Lindsey Graham has a bill in the Senate which is designed to fix the asylum loopholes. No doubt some Democrats think they can attach what they just passed in the House to whatever Lindsey Graham is trying to do. So mission critical right now. And this is why I'm talking to you today, is you need to make abundantly clear that your senators know that you oppose what the House passed and you do not believe this country should pay the price of a massive amnesty in exchange for closing a much-needed loophole that represents both a national security and humanitarian crisis. It is the height of moral bankruptcy for the Democrats to use what is a bona fide crisis that they had a big role in, by the way, creating, to turn around and try to jam another amnesty through Congress. And we all know that Lindsey Graham, swell guy, we all know Lindsey's track record, right? We know Lindsey Graham will turn around and try to cut a deal. He likes to make deals. He says, look, you got to cooperate with the Democrats if you're going to get anything. Well, there are two approaches we could take to this. We could say, all right, let's cut a deal with the Democrats. Does anybody really believe that's going to produce a reasonable outcome? Does anybody believe that that can actually be accomplished without incentivizing further illegal immigration? Now, the alternative would be to simply wait to see how this election pans out. Then the question becomes, does the Trump administration have in its quiver the arrows needed to handle on the executive level what is needed to stop the hemorrhaging of our border from people from Central America and all around the world? And the answer, of course, is maybe. What's our position on this threat of imposing tariffs on Mexico? Well, look, we've been watching Mexico and the Mexican government for decades now, and I'm here to tell you that even though they sound like they might be willing to do something and they're going through the effort of deploying troops along the southern border, from past experience, and we hope President Trump knows this, they're only going to keep those troops on the border long enough to cut a deal and put off the tariffs for some period of time. The Mexican government has one basic principle. They do not want people coming illegally to the United States to settle in Mexico. They don't want anybody coming to Mexico, unless maybe you're an American retiree, but they certainly are more than happy to tolerate hundreds of thousands, millions of people going through Mexico en route to the United States as long as they don't stay in Mexico. Now, Mexico tries to take this very high-minded sounding approach to the problem. They say, well, we just can't, hold people back, humanitarian, yada, yada, yada. However, what the Trump administration is trying to do is get the Mexican government to sign the same kind of agreement that we have with Canada, a third country, safe country agreement. This would require anybody coming through Mexico who believes that he or she is a refugee to make that claim in the first safe country they get to, in this case, Mexico. By having an agreement like that in place, the Trump administration could summarily return anybody coming from Central America, from Guatemala, from Honduras, from El Salvador, or anywhere else around the world, back to Mexico to make the asylum claim there. And of course, that would mean it would become Mexico's problem to figure out how to handle it or to send them back home. Is the Mexican government going to be willing to sign that? Is the Mexican government going to really finally do what it needs to do under its responsible role as a good neighbor of the United States? Or do they just want to remain in the corrupt jaws of these cartels and others that are transshipping people through the country with a bunch of phony humanitarian visas that allow people to simply move through the country as they jump the border? This is where the Trump negotiating skills will really be put to the test. FAIR supports signing a safe third country agreement, safe country agreement with Mexico. The president needs to hold firm on the tariff threat until the Mexican government signs that agreement. We understand that American business and therefore a lot of Republicans don't like the idea of the tariffs. Tariffs are not a great idea. The president may like them. Free trade is a good idea. If it's fair trade, free trade is a great idea. But let's be honest. Sometimes you got to get tough. Sometimes you have to do what's required. Now, in Mexico's defense, the United States Congress created the problem. The United States Congress could fix the problem. We do not believe it fair that we are required as a nation under international law to entertain the asylum claims of anybody who has come through a safe country where they could have made that claim beforehand. An alien who basically transships and forum shops. International law doesn't require us to accommodate an alien who wants to decide where he or she wants to resettle as a refugee. If you're a refugee, you're happy to go anywhere you're safe. Safety is your primary concern, whether it's near the home country or not. It's ideal, it should be, but if it's not, you certainly don't get to say pick and choose the way under Angela Merkel, people from North Africa were picking and choosing where to go in the EU. Remember, going back in 2015, they all wanted to go to Germany, Sweden. They had their location of choice. It does not work that way. There is no reason why the Mexican government shouldn't sign this agreement. And we suggest the president hold firm on that. And we'll be coming to you later with solutions on how we can put pressure on the administration to stand firm on that, as well as continuing to put pressure on Lindsey Graham to stand firm on a clean anti-trafficking fix-it bill. The behavior of the Democrats in Congress since the Trump administration came into office as it relates to immigration has been deplorable and outrageous, and without any explanation. They have never explained their opposition to the wall. They have never explained, not to my satisfaction, their opposition to providing additional resources and funding to either build the wall or provide additional censors, interior enforcement, their opposition to additional detention space. They have arbitrarily capped detention space. They have affirmatively clawed back money that would have been appropriated for the wall. They have clawed back money, or tried to, from the defense budget to prevent the administration from reprogramming money to build the wall. They have done everything in their power to thwart interior enforcement. They have objected to interior enforcement. They have objected to the use of E-Verify. They have objected to the use of state and local cooperation in enforcing immigration law. In fact, they are doing everything they can not only to reward past illegal immigration, but to support and sustain it moving forward for the future. And Exhibit A is what happened in Congress, H.R. 6, the Immigration, the American Dream and Protection Act that they passed earlier this week. How long can this go on? How long can a sovereign nation like the United States handle a completely uncontrolled immigration situation? People are now projecting close to over 100,000 illegal immigrants coming in. And when you make a claim for asylum under the law that was designed to try to prevent exactly this kind of thing from happening, the law that established the credible fear threshold, people are coming in using the asylum system by fabricating asylum claims, getting through the credible fear determination, and then waiting up to 5 years or longer to get an asylum hearing, for which they probably will not show up. The Democrats are fully aware of what is going on. They know exactly why this level of illegal immigration is happening. They know it's fraudulent. They know it's a problem. They know that it's costing communities billions of dollars. In fact, this bill that they passed this week, has been scored to cost taxpayers $35 billion. Apparently money is no object. They know all these things are a problem, and yet they will not take steps to fix the problem. They're talking about some kind of multilateral solution through the United Nations, or trying to help Mexico resettle more refugees by providing them more funding. Where do you think the funding would go if we gave it to the Mexican government to help resettle refugees? Where do you think the funding's been going to help people in Central America, to help communities in Central America? At some point, the United States has to take responsibility for its own sovereign affairs, to make its own law respected around the world. H.R. 6, passed by the House, by the Democrats last week, is a step in exactly the wrong direction at exactly the wrong time. If you want to add kerosene to a fire, add fuel to the crisis we face as a nation, then you would do what the Democrats did this week. You would do what they did, and then you would continue to push the policies they're pushing today. The American people deserve better than that. We had a jobs report to come out this week claiming we're under full employment, but once again we see wages relatively stagnant. If full employment is full employment, if we have unemployment really at the 3% level, that must mean employers are having to offer significant wage increases to attract qualified employees. The data don't show that. The data show employers can still find people without significantly raising wages. That means there's not really that tight a labor market. It also means that immigration is continuing to fuel labor market increases. and that people coming illegally are also, after they've been here a period of time, getting work documents and entering the labor force. The Democrats really say they care about the American worker. They would take steps to work with the Trump administration to fix these problems, moving forward on a bipartisan basis. Our political system does not work with children only in the room. We need grown-ups with grown-up solutions. We need people to stop the name-calling and the smears for 5 minutes. And we need them to work together to help the president achieve his objectives. The president won in 2016. The president won on the strength of his promises on the immigration issue. Those promises, despite his best efforts, have been opposed by people who have an agenda that isn't always in the best national interest, to put it mildly. Only you and I can work to keep this thing moving forward. The president will need our help all through 2019. And I know I can count on you to stay engaged with FAIR and our action alerts and our phone to action, calls to action. You did a great job. Obviously, we weren't able to totally stop the Democrats on H.R. 6, but there's plenty of work to be done moving forward, and the game's not over yet. So we appreciate all your help. Stay with us on this, and we'll bring you more information and up-to-date bulletins as they become available. Thanks for listening.